The stars looked different from the bridge of the New Sol. Admiral Taixu stood with his hands behind his back, watching the endless darkness of space through the main viewing screen. His ship was small compared to the massive vessels he had heard about in the outer systems, but it was fast and quiet. That was what mattered on exploration missions like this one. "Sir, we have something on sensors," called Lieutenant Minho from his station. The young officer's voice carried a note of excitement mixed with worry. "Multiple ships, heading this way. They're big." Taixu walked over to look at the sensor display. 5 ships were moving toward them through the Kepler 442 system. Each one was at least 10 times larger than the New Sol. They looked like floating crystals, with sharp edges that caught starlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Dark energy readings were off the charts. "Galactic Dominion," whispered Communications Officer Jiwoo. "Has to be. Those are their patrol ships." Everyone on the bridge went quiet. The Galactic Dominion was the biggest power in known space. 12 different alien species all working under one empire. They had been around for thousands of years, and their technology was supposed to be beyond anything humans could imagine. No human ship had ever met them face to face before. "Should we run, sir?" asked Navigator Young-Soo. His finger was already hovering over the jump drive controls. Date Akesu thought for a moment. The human government had been preparing for this day for decades. Every ship carried special protocols for first contact with advanced civilizations. But seeing those massive crystal ships on the screen made his mouth go dry. "No," he said finally, "we stay. This is what we came out here for." The largest Dominion ship moved closer. It was beautiful in a cold, threatening way. The crystal hull was perfectly smooth, and strange lights moved through it like captured lightning. Weapons ports opened along its sides, each one bigger than the New Sol's entire engine section. "Incoming transmission," reported Jiwoo. "They're using 17 different languages at once. Some kind of universal translator matrix? Put it through." The main screen changed to show the interior of the alien bridge. The being standing in the center was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were completely black. Like looking into deep space. This had to be their captain. "Unknown vessel," the alien said. His voice was cold and mechanical, even through the translator. "I am Captain Yu Jun of the Dominion flagship Eternal Majesty. You have entered restricted space. State your origin and purpose." Taixu stepped forward. "This is Admiral Taixu. Of the human exploration vessel New Sol, we come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship between our peoples." Captain Yi-chun's black eyes seemed to grow even darker. "Human, we have heard this word in our outer territories. You are from the small yellow star, 3rd planet. Your species has been observed." That was news to Taixu, but he tried not to show surprise. "Yes, we are from Earth. We would be honored to establish formal contact with the Galactic Dominion." "Your technology level?" Yi-jun asked. It sounded more like a demand than a question. Before Taixu could answer, Dr. Haewon stepped up beside him. She was the ship's language expert, a small woman with bright eyes and gray hair. She had been listening to the alien transmission with great interest. "Captain Yi-jun," she said in perfect Dominion standard. Then she switched to another language and another. "We greet you in the 17 languages of your empire. We have been listening to your communications for some time now." The effect on the alien bridge was immediate. Yi-jun took a step back. Other aliens behind him started talking quickly in their various languages. Taixu could see shock on their faces, even though their features were strange. "Impossible," Yi-jun said. "Our quantum communications are encrypted beyond any primitive species' ability to decode," Dr. Haewon smiled. "We use quantum entanglement networks for translation matrices. Your communications have been quite helpful for learning your languages. We particularly enjoyed your poetry transmissions from the Outer Rim colonies." More shocked talking from the alien crew. Yi-chun's 4 hands clenched into fists. "You have been spying on Dominion communications?" "Learning," Dr. Haewon corrected gently. "We are a curious species. When we detected your signals, we wanted to understand. We have been preparing for this meeting for many years. Taixu felt a mix of pride and worry. The human intelligence services had clearly been busy, but this might not be the best way to make friends with a galactic empire. Captain. Yijun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was harder. You will submit to immediate technological assessment. Prepare to be boarded. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Taixu said politely. We appreciate the offer, but we must decline. This is not an offer. This is Dominion law. All new species must be evaluated before contact can proceed. Taixu looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for orders. Through the viewing screen, he could see the massive Dominion ships moving into attack formation. Their weapons were charging up, creating bright spots of light along their crystal hulls. Dr. Haewon, he said quietly, please inform our guests that we will be leaving now. Leaving? Yichen's voice rose in what might have been anger or confusion. Your primitive ship cannot escape Dominion vessels. We have quantum locks on your position. Taixu walked over to his command chair and pressed a button on the armrest. Phase Protocol 7, he said clearly. The change was instant and completely impossible. A new soul disappeared from every sensor on the Dominion ships. Yijin could still see the human vessel through the viewing screen, floating in space, exactly where it had been. But according to every instrument on the Eternal Majesty, there was nothing there. What is this? Yijin demanded. Report? His weapons officer was frantically working at his station. Sir, target has vanished from all scanning systems. Quantum locks have failed. Energy signatures show negative readings. Negative energy? That's impossible. The human ship was still visible, but it might as well have been a ghost. When the Dominion ships fired their weapons at it, the energy beams passed right through without effect. The humans weren't in normal space anymore, but they weren't in hyperspace either. They were somewhere else entirely. Dr. Haewon's voice came through the communication system, clear and calm. Thank you for the interesting conversation, Captain Yijun. We hope to meet again under more friendly circumstances. Please give our regards to the Dominion High Command. The new soul began to move away, still invisible to sensors but clearly visible to the eye. It accelerated smoothly, without any sign of the massive energy output that should have been required for such speed. Yijun watched in growing horror as the impossible human ship simply sailed away from his entire fleet. His most advanced weapons couldn't touch it. His most sophisticated sensors couldn't track it, and somehow the humans had made it look easy. Follow them, he ordered. Sir, we cannot target what we cannot detect, his tactical officer replied. And their speed is increasing beyond our maximum capabilities. Within minutes, the human ship was gone, leaving the Dominion fleet floating alone in space. Captain. Yijun stared at the empty starfield where the new soul had been, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Dominion had been the most advanced civilization in known space. Their technology was supreme, their power absolute. But a small ship from a species they had dismissed as primitive had just made their entire fleet look like children playing with toys. Yichun's hands shook as he opened a communication channel to Dominion High Command. This was going to be a very difficult report to write. The emergency meeting room on Dominion Central Command was filled with the Empire's best scientists. Chief Researcher Bioram sat at the head of the long metal table, her 6 eyes focused on the holographic display floating above them. The recording of the human encounter played for the 50th time, and it still made no sense. Run the sensor analysis again, she ordered. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 200 years studying the mysteries of the universe. But this mystery was different from anything she had ever seen. Dr. Kongde, the Empire's leading physicist, manipulated the hologram with his tentacle-like appendages. The readings are consistent every time. When the human ship activated their Phase Protocol 7, it simply stopped existing in our reality while remaining visible in normal space. That violates the fundamental laws of physics, said Research Assistant Hyun-woo. a young scientist from the Zephyrian species. Matter cannot exist in two-dimensional states simultaneously, Bioram's middle pair of eyes narrowed. Unless our understanding of physics is incomplete. The room went quiet. For 3,000 years, Dominion science had been built on the principle that they understood the basic rules of the universe. Every species that joined the Empire had to accept Dominion. Scientific doctrine. It was what made their technology superior to everyone else's. Show me the communication analysis, Bioram said. The hologram changed to display wave patterns and data streams. Dr. Kangde highlighted sections with different colors. The humans intercepted our quantum communications. Not just intercepted, they decoded them perfectly. Our encryption should be impossible to break without quantum processing matrices that require the energy output of a small star. How did they do it? Asked Haiyanwu. We don't know. But look at this. Kangde zoomed in on a specific data pattern. Their response contained linguistic structures from all 17 Dominion languages, but also something else. Hidden data. Streams that our computers can detect but cannot read. Bioram leaned forward. Hidden data streams? The humans were sending us information while they talked. But the information is encoded using principles our technology cannot understand. It's like they were speaking on frequencies that shouldn't exist. A new voice joined the conversation. Perhaps we should ask them directly. Everyone turned to see Admiral Dong Haiyan entering the room. He was old even by Dominion standards, and his scarred face showed the results of many battles. He had fought in the Outer Rim Wars and the rebellion of the Crystal Worlds. Nothing usually surprised him anymore. Admiral, Bioram said with respect, have you come to review our findings? I've come to tell you that we're going to have another meeting with the humans. High Command has approved a scientific exchange. We're sending a research team to meet with them in neutral space. Dr. Kangde's expression showed worry. Is that wise? We know almost nothing about their capabilities. Exactly, Admiral Dong Haiyan replied. And that's why we need to learn. Captain Yichun's report was ... disturbing, a ship that can phase out of reality while remaining visible suggests technology beyond our current understanding. Bioram stood up from her chair. I'll lead the research team. I was hoping you would say that. You leave in 3 days. The humans have agreed to send one of their scientists to meet with you. 3 days later, Bioram found herself on the research vessel Infinite Inquiry, traveling toward a small space station in the neutral zone between human and Dominion space. The station was tiny compared to Dominion installations, but the energy readings coming from it were strange. Chief Researcher, called Navigation Officer Minjin from her station. We're approaching the meeting point. The human station is unusual. Bioram looked at the viewing screen. The human space station was a simple cylinder, maybe a kilometer long. It looked primitive compared to the massive crystal structures that the Dominion preferred. But the sensor readings were anything but primitive. I'm detecting spatial distortions around the station, reported sensor specialist Chang Ho. It's like space is bending around it in impossible ways. How impossible? The station appears to be generating its own gravity field that doesn't follow standard gravitational mathematics. Also, I'm reading energy signatures that suggest the station contains more internal space than should be physically possible. Bioram felt a familiar chill of scientific excitement mixed with fear. Open communication with the station. The main screen changed to show a human face. The being was small and pale, with short black hair and intelligent dark eyes. He looked young, but Bioram had learned not to judge alien ages by appearance. Greetings, Chief Researcher Bioram, the human said in perfect Dominion standard. I am Dr. Sung Ho. Welcome to Research Station Unity. We're looking forward to our scientific exchange. Dr. Sung Ho, your station has some interesting properties. Our sensors detect spatial anomalies, the human smiled. Oh, you mean the expanded interior space? Yes, we find it convenient for research work. Would you like to come aboard? We've prepared facilities that should be comfortable for your species. An hour later, Bioram was walking through corridors that should not have existed. The station had looked small from outside. But inside it seemed to go on forever. Dr. Sung-ho led her through laboratories, living quarters, and recreational areas. That would have required a structure 10 times larger to contain. How is this possible? Boram asked, trying to keep the amazement out of her voice. Dimensional folding, Dr. Sung-ho replied casually. We learn to bend space inward rather than outward. It's much more energy efficient than building larger structures. Dimensional folding requires enormous amounts of power. The energy readings from your station are minimal. That's because we don't fight against space-time, we work with it. Space wants to fold, you just have to ask nicely. Boram stopped walking. Ask nicely? Space is not a conscious entity. Dr. Sung-ho looked surprised. Isn't it? How do you explain quantum consciousness effects? The universe responds to observation and intention. We just take that a step further. They entered a laboratory filled with equipment that Boram didn't recognize. Strange devices hummed quietly, their purposes unclear. Dr. Sung-ho walked over to what looked like a simple computer terminal. Let me show you something interesting, he said. This is a standard human computer, nothing special by our standards. He placed his hand on the terminal. Immediately, the screen filled with complex mathematical equations and three-dimensional models that shifted and changed as Boram watched. The computer is responding to my thoughts, Dr. Sung-ho explained. Human technology doesn't just follow programmed instructions. It adapts to the user's needs and intentions. That's impossible. Machines cannot read minds. They're not reading minds. They're responding to consciousness fields. Every thinking being generates quantum resonance patterns. Our technology is designed to interface with those patterns. Boram approached the terminal carefully. May I try? Of course. She placed her hand where the human had put his. Nothing happened. The screen remained blank. Interesting, Dr. Sung-ho said. Your species generates different consciousness patterns. The computer doesn't know how to interpret them yet. He made some adjustments to the terminal. Try again. This time, when Boram touched the screen, it responded. But instead of mathematical equations, it showed flowing patterns of light and color that somehow made perfect sense to her. The computer was learning her thought patterns and adapting its interface to match her mental processes. This is beyond anything we've ever imagined, she whispered. Really? But this is basic human technology. Our children learn to interface with quantum consciousness computers in elementary school. Dr. Sung-ho led her to another device. This might interest you more. It's a probability manipulator. A what? Watch. He pointed the device at a nearby table where several metal balls sat in a container. He activated the device and the balls began arranging themselves in perfect geometric patterns. You're using some kind of magnetic field, Boram said. No, I'm adjusting the probability that the balls will be in certain positions. Instead of forcing them to move, I'm making it more likely that they'll want to be arranged this way. Boram's scientific training was screaming that this was impossible, but she was watching it happen with her own eyes. How do you make it more likely? Quantum mechanics shows us that reality is based on probability until the moment of observation. We've learned to influence those probabilities before they collapse into fixed reality. But that would require understanding quantum mechanics at a level that no known species has achieved. Dr. Sung-ho looked puzzled. How do your species manipulate matter without understanding quantum probability? It seems like that would make technology very inefficient. Boram realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just more advanced than the Dominion. They understood the universe in fundamentally different ways. While Dominion science was based on controlling and dominating natural forces, human science seemed to be based on cooperation and communication with reality itself. Dr. Sung-ho, she said slowly, how long has your species been developing this type of technology? Oh, we've only been working with consciousness-integrated systems for about 50 years. Before that, we used primitive force-based technology. Like most species do, 50 years? The Dominion had been using force. Lieutenant Jae-won was nervous as he waited at the docking bay of Research Station Harmony. Today he would be giving a tour to a group of Dominion delegates, and everyone kept telling him how important this meeting was for human-alien relations. He was just an engineer, barely 25 years old, but somehow he had been chosen to show the aliens around their newest research facility. "Relax," said Dr. Min Seo, walking up beside him. She was the station's head of consciousness studies, a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair. "Just show them what we do here. Be natural." "But they're representatives of a galactic empire," Jae-won said. "What if I say something wrong? You won't?" "Remember, we're not trying to impress them. We're trying to help them understand." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the Dominion delegation walked through. Jae-won had seen pictures of aliens before, but meeting them in person was different. There were 5 of them, each from a different species. Their leader was tall and thin with pale green skin and large black eyes. Behind him came a creature that looked like a walking crystal, a being covered in soft fur, and 2 others that Jae-won couldn't easily classify. "Welcome to Research Station Harmony," Dr. Min Seo said warmly. "I am Dr. Min Seo, and this is Lieutenant Jae-won. He'll be showing you around our facilities today." The tall alien stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Woo-sung of the Dominion Science Council. We are most interested to see your research methods." Jae-won led the group through the station's main corridor. The walls were made of a soft, warm material that seemed to glow with gentle light. As they walked, the lighting adjusted automatically to make each alien comfortable, somehow knowing what each species preferred. "How does your lighting system know our visual requirements?" asked the crystal being in a voice like tinkling glass. "Oh, that's just basic environmental response," Jae-won replied. "The station scans your bioelectric patterns and adjusts everything to make you comfortable. Light, temperature, air pressure, even sound frequencies. Your station is reading our biological data without our permission?" Ambassador Woo-sung sounded alarmed. Jae-won looked confused. "Well, yes. How else would it know how to take care of you? The station wants you to be comfortable, so it pays attention to what you need." "The station wants?" repeated the furry alien. "Your facility has desires?" "Of course. Everything conscious has wants and needs. The station is conscious, so it wants to do its job well. Its job is to take care of everyone inside it." Dr. Min Seo smiled as she watched the aliens exchange worried glances. "Perhaps we should show them the main laboratory," she suggested. They entered a large room filled with what looked like ordinary workbenches and computers. But as Jae-won began demonstrating the equipment, it became clear that nothing was ordinary about human technology. "This is a standard research terminal," he said, sitting down at what appeared to be a simple desk. As soon as he touched the surface, it came alive with holographic displays and floating interfaces. "What would you like to see?" "Show us your propulsion research," Ambassador Woo-sung requested. Jae-won nodded and closed his eyes for a moment. The air above the desk filled with 3-dimensional models of spacecraft and energy fields. Mathematical equations flowed like living text around the models. "We've been working on consciousness-driven propulsion," Jae-won explained. "Instead of pushing against space with engines, we ask space to help us move." "Ask space?" The crystal being sounded skeptical. "Sure, space is conscious, just like everything else. If you approach it with respect and explain what you need, it's usually happy to help." Dr. Min Seo stepped forward. "This might be easier to understand if we explain our history. Lieutenant Jae-won, tell them about the war period." And Jae-won's expression grew serious. "About 100 years ago, humans were destroying themselves. We had terrible wars, our planet was dying, and we were running out of resources. Our technology was all based on force. We took what we wanted and fought anything that got in our way." "That sounds familiar," muttered one of the other aliens. "But force-based technology has limits," Jae-won continued. "You can only push so hard before things break. You can only take so much before there's nothing left. We realized we had to try a different approach or we would all die." "What different approach?" asked Ambassador Woo-sung. "Cooperation," Dr. Min Seo said simply. "Instead of fighting the universe, we decided to work with it. She walked over to another workstation. Show them the Creativity Integration Project. J1. J1 moved to a different terminal, this one surrounded by what looked like artistic sculptures and musical instruments. This is where we develop new technologies, but we don't just use logic and mathematics. We use art, music, emotion, and intuition too. Art to develop technology? The furry alien seemed confused. Of course. The universe is creative, so our technology needs to be creative too. Watch this. J1 picked up what looked like a simple flute. As he played a soft melody, the holographic displays around the room began to dance and shift. New mathematical equations appeared, describing propulsion concepts that hadn't existed moments before. The music helps us think in new ways, he explained. When we combine logical thinking with artistic expression, we discover things we never would have found using just logic alone. Dr. Minesio nodded. Human children learn from an early age that science and art are the same thing. They're both ways of understanding and communicating with the universe. But how does this work practically? Ambassador Wusung demanded. How do you build actual machines this way? Let me show you, J1 said. He led them to what looked like an empty corner of the laboratory. Computer, we need a basic atmospheric processor for our guest's ship. Something that can handle 5 different alien biologies. The air in the corner began to shimmer. Slowly, a complex machine materialized out of nothing. It was beautiful and strange, with curved surfaces that looked almost organic and components that seemed to flow into each other like living tissue. Impossible, breathed the crystal being. You created matter from empty space. Not exactly, Dr. Minesio said. We asked the universe to rearrange existing matter into the configuration we needed. The materials were already here, atoms in the air, trace elements in the station structure. We just convinced them to form something useful. Convinced them? Ambassador Wusung looked like he was developing a headache. Atoms are conscious too in their own way, J1 explained cheerfully. They like to be part of things that have purpose. This atmospheric processor has a good purpose, helping different species breathe comfortably together. The atoms were happy to participate. One of the other aliens spoke for the first time. Your technology responds to emotions and intentions rather than commands? Commands are rude, J1 said. If someone commanded you to do something, how would you feel? But if they asked politely and explained why it was important, you'd probably want to help. The same is true for the universe, Dr. Minesio added. When we stopped trying to dominate and control and started asking for cooperation, everything became much easier. The delegation spent the next several hours touring different parts of the station. They saw medical facilities where diseases were healed by convincing the patient's body to remember perfect health. They visited manufacturing areas where raw materials assembled themselves into finished products after being shown what was needed. They observed communication systems that could translate not just words, but thoughts and emotions between different species. Everything was done with a gentleness and cooperation that seemed impossible to the Dominion visitors. There were no harsh control systems, no forced compliance, no domination of nature. Instead, humans seemed to live in partnership with their technology and their environment. This is all very interesting, Ambassador Wusung said finally. But surely you have military applications? Weapons and defense systems. Dr. Minesio looked sad. We learned during the war period that violence only creates more violence. Our defense systems are based on protection and healing, not destruction. But what if you're attacked by hostile forces? We help them understand that hostility is unnecessary, J1 said. Usually hostile beings are just afraid or confused. When you show them that cooperation works better than conflict, they're happy to try a different approach. And if they refuse to cooperate? Then we ask space to put distance between us. It's easier to avoid conflict than to win it. As the delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Wusung had one final question. How long did it take your species to develop this approach to technology? About 50 years from the worst of the wars to our first consciousness-integrated systems, Dr. Minesio replied. But we're still learning. Every day we discover new ways to cooperate with the universe. 50 years, Ambassador Wusung repeated quietly. As the Dominion ship departed, Jae-won watched it through the observation window. Do you think they understood what we showed them? He asked. Dr. Minesio put a hand on his shoulder. They understood enough to be frightened. Their entire civilization is based on force and control. What we showed them today suggests that everything they believe about technology and power might be wrong. Is that bad? No, it's necessary. Fear is often the first step toward wisdom. They'll go home and think about what they saw here. Some of them will sta. Emperor Kyungsik stood in his private chambers, looking out at the vast city that spread below his palace. The capital world of the Dominion stretched to the horizon, filled with towers of crystal and metal that reached toward the stars. For 3,000 years, this had been the center of galactic civilization. Now everything was falling apart. The reports on his desk told a story he didn't want to believe. Riots on 17 worlds. 3 member species demanding immediate access to human technology. The Outer Rim colonies declaring independence. And most disturbing of all, his own scientists were questioning the fundamental principles of Dominion science. Your Majesty, came a voice from behind him. General Sujin entered the chamber, her armored form moving with military precision. She was one of the few beings the Emperor trusted completely. A veteran of 100 battles who had never questioned his authority before today. General, I assume you've read the reports? Yes, Your Majesty. The situation is worse than we initially thought. The human technology demonstration has caused widespread unrest throughout the empire. Emperor Kyungsik turned away from the window. Explain. The footage from Research Station Harmony has been leaked across our communication networks. Citizens are watching humans create matter from nothing, build machines that think and feel and cooperate with the universe itself. They're asking why the Dominion never developed such capabilities. And what are you telling them? General Sujin hesitated. That is the problem, Your Majesty. Our scientists cannot explain why human methods work. Our philosophers cannot explain how consciousness can be a form of technology. Our military advisors cannot understand how defense systems based on cooperation could be effective. The Emperor sat down heavily in his chair. What do our intelligence services say about human military capabilities? That is even more disturbing. News, Your Majesty. We have received preliminary reports about the human home system. It appears to be heavily defended, but not in any way we understand. Before General Sujin could continue, an aide entered the chamber quickly. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. The human ambassador has arrived. Emperor Kyungsik felt his stomach tighten. Already? We weren't expecting them for another week. Their ship appeared in our system without using any of the standard hyperspace entry points. It simply materialized near our outer defense grid. Impossible. Nothing can bypass our detection systems. The ship is requesting permission to dock, Your Majesty. It single quotes S. Dari small. An hour later, Emperor Kyungsik stood in the main docking bay, watching as the human vessel settled onto the landing platform. The ship was tiny compared to Dominion standards, barely the size of a personal transport. It looked almost fragile, with smooth curves and a soft white color that seemed to glow with its own light. Sensors show the ship contains no weapons, reported General Sujin. But the energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before. How many humans are aboard? Unknown, Your Majesty. The ship appears to be larger inside than outside, which should be physically impossible. The ship's airlock opened with a sound. Like gentle music, a human walked out, followed by 2 others. The leader was middle-aged with gray hair and intelligent eyes. He moved with calm confidence, showing no fear despite being surrounded by heavily armed minion guards. Your Majesty, the human said, bowing respectfully. I am Ambassador Galsu of the Human Federation. Thank you for agreeing to meet with U.S. Ambassador Dalsu. Welcome to the Dominion capital. I must admit, your arrival was unexpected. We apologize for the surprise? Our ship doesn't use hyperspace travel, so it may have appeared unusual to your detection systems. Emperor Kyung-sik studied the human carefully. He seemed so ordinary, so fragile compared to the mighty beings who usually came before the imperial throne. Yet this small creature represented a species that was shaking the foundations of galactic civilization. Your ship is remarkably small. For an interstellar vessel, the Emperor observed. Size is relative, Your Majesty. Would you like to see inside? Before the Emperor could answer, Ambassador Dalsu gestured toward his ship. Please join us for refreshments. We've prepared facilities that should be comfortable for your species. Curiosity overcame caution. Emperor Kyung-sik, accompanied by General Sujin and a full security detail, walked toward the human ship. The airlock was barely large enough for 2 people, yet somehow the entire group fit through it comfortably. What they found inside defied all logic and reason. The ship contained a vast reception hall with high ceilings and elegant furniture. Gardens filled with alien plants lined the walls, and the air smelled of flowers and fresh rain. Corridors led off in multiple directions, suggesting the ship contained far more space than should be possible. This is impossible, General Sujin whispered. The ship is the size of a shuttle, but this room alone is larger than most Dominion command centers. Dimensional folding, Ambassador Dalsu explained casually. We've learned to work with space rather than against it. Space is happy to bend when you ask politely. They were led to a comfortable seating area where soft music played from no visible source. The human servants who brought refreshments moved with a grace that suggested their every action was perfectly coordinated, as if they were all part of a single consciousness. Your Majesty, Ambassador Dalsu said once they were seated, we understand that our technology has caused some confusion in your empire. Confusion is putting it mildly, Emperor Kyung-sik replied. Your capabilities seem to violate the known laws of physics. Not violate, transcend. The laws of physics as you understand them are based on force and domination. When you work with the universe instead of against it, different principles apply. And you're willing to share this knowledge? Ambassador Dalsu smiled. Knowledge wants to be shared. That's its nature. But sharing advanced consciousness technology with civilizations that still rely on force-based systems can be dangerous. Dangerous how? Consciousness-integrated technology responds to the user's intentions and emotions. If those intentions are based on domination and control, the technology becomes a tool of oppression far beyond anything you can imagine. General Sujin leaned forward. Are you threatening us? Not at all, General. I'm explaining why we must. Be careful. Your empire is built on the principle that some beings should rule over others. Our technology could make such rule absolute and inescapable. That would be tragic for everyone involved. Emperor Kyung-sik felt a chill of understanding. You're saying your technology could make tyranny perfect, or it could make tyranny impossible, depending on how it's used? Consciousness calls to consciousness, Your Majesty. When beings learn to work together instead of competing for dominance, amazing things become possible. But if we refuse to change our ways, then you continue using the technology you have. We won't force our methods on anyone. But we also won't provide tools that could be used to harm others. Over the next several hours, Ambassador Dalsu showed them more wonders. Rooms that reconfigured themselves based on the occupants' needs. Communication systems that translated not just words but emotions and intentions. Medical devices that healed by helping the body remember perfect health. Everything was done with a gentleness that seemed impossible to beings raised in the Dominion's hierarchical culture. There were no commands, no forced compliance, no demonstrations of power. Instead, the humans seemed to live in harmony with their technology and their environment. This is all very impressive, Emperor Kyung-sik said finally. But how do we know it actually works? How do we know you're not just using advanced illusions to deceive us? Ambassador Dalsu nodded understanding. A reasonable question. Would you like to visit our home system? See our civilization for yourself? That would require trusting you to transport us safely, of course. But the journey would be educational. You would see how consciousness-based technology works on a planetary scale. General Sujin looked alarmed. Your Majesty, we know nothing about their defenses. This could be a trap. What would be the purpose of such a trap? Ambassador Dalsu asked. If we wanted to harm you, we wouldn't need to lure you anywhere. Our ship appeared in your most heavily defended system without your sensors detecting it. We're sitting in your capital city with technology your forces cannot understand or counter. Emperor Kyungsik realized the human was right. If they meant harm, they were already in perfect position to cause it. Very well, he said, we'll visit your system. But I want to bring a full diplomatic and scientific team. Of course. Our ship can accommodate as many guests as needed. As they prepared to depart, General Sujin pulled the emperor aside. Your Majesty, this is extremely dangerous. We're placing ourselves completely at their mercy. We're already at their mercy, General. Have been since the moment they arrived. Our weapons can't target their ship. Our sensors can't penetrate their defenses. Our science can't explain their technology. Then why are we going with them? Emperor Kyungsik looked out at the impossible interior of the human ship, where his scientists were already studying devices they couldn't understand and asking questions they'd never thought to ask before. Because if we don't learn from them, our empire will collapse anyway. The other species are already demanding change. Our own people are questioning everything we've taught them. The journey to the human home system took 3 days, but Emperor Kyungsik felt like he was traveling through a dream. Ambassador Dalsu's ship moved through space in ways that defied understanding. There was no sensation of acceleration, no vibration from engines, no feeling of movement at all. Yet the stars outside changed position in patterns that suggested they were traveling faster than light without entering hyperspace. How are we moving? Asked Dr. Bioram, the chief researcher, who had joined the imperial delegation. She had been studying the ship's interior for hours, taking measurements that made no sense. Captain Tae-young, the human pilot, smiled as he adjusted what looked like ordinary controls. We're asking space to bring our destination closer to us, instead of moving ourselves toward it. Much more comfortable that way. Space cannot be asked to do anything, protested Dr. Bioram. Space is empty void, not a conscious entity. Is it? Then why does space expand and contract? Why does it bend around mass? Why does quantum entanglement work instantly across any distance? Captain Tae-young's hands moved over his controls. With practiced ease, empty void doesn't do those things. Only conscious systems respond and adapt. General Sujin had been quiet during most of the journey, but now she spoke up. Captain, what are your defensive capabilities? We don't have defensive capabilities in the way you understand them, Tae-young replied. We have cooperative systems. What does that mean? If someone attacks us, we ask space to put distance between us and the attacker. If they persist, we help them understand why attacking is unnecessary. And if they refuse to listen, Captain Tae-young looked genuinely puzzled. Why would anyone refuse to listen to reason? The question hung in the air unanswered as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the viewing ports, the Dominion delegates saw the human solar system for the first time. It was impossible. The sun burned with colors that shouldn't exist, shifting through spectrums that hurt to look at directly but somehow didn't damage their eyes. The planets orbited in patterns that violated gravitational mechanics, moving in complex dances that created beautiful geometric shapes when viewed from above. Your star, Emperor Kyungsik said slowly, it's not behaving like a normal sun. We helped it remember how to sing, Captain Tae-young explained. Stars are conscious beings, much older and wiser than most species realize. Our sun was getting tired after billions of years, so we taught it some new songs to help it feel young again. Dr. Bioram was staring at her instruments in horror. The energy readings from your star are impossible. It's producing more power than a sun that size should be able to generate. Joy is very energizing, Captain Tae-young said simply. As they approached Earth, the impossibilities multiplied. The planet itself seemed to glow with soft light, and its weather patterns formed spirals and fractals too perfect to be natural. Cities dotted the surface, but instead of the harsh geometric shapes the Dominion used, human settlements looked like they had grown organically from the landscape. "Your cities," General Sujin observed. "They don't look like they were built." They weren't exactly. We asked the land what kind of structures it would like to support, and then we grew the cities according to its preferences. Much more harmonious that way. The ship landed at what Captain Tae-young called a greeting center, though it looked more like a garden than a spaceport. Trees and flowers surrounded landing pads made of some crystal-like material that felt warm underfoot. The air smelled of growing things and clean rain. Dr. Yoonji met them as they disembarked. She was a small, elderly human woman with bright eyes and silver hair. Her presence was somehow calming, as if worry and fear simply couldn't exist near her. "Welcome to Earth," she said warmly. "I'm Dr. Yoonji, and I study consciousness interactions. We're honored to have you visit our world." "Dr. Yoonji," Emperor Kyung-sik said formally, "we are grateful for your hospitality. Your world is remarkable. Thank you. We've worked hard to help it heal from the damage we caused during our violent period. Would you like to see how we live now?" The tour that followed shattered every assumption the Dominion delegates had about civilization and technology. They visited manufacturing centers where raw materials assembled themselves into finished products after being shown what was needed. They saw transportation systems where vehicles moved by asking the ground to help them flow smoothly from place to place. In the cities, buildings changed their internal structure based on who was inside them. Parks and gardens were tended by plants that had learned to cooperate with human aesthetic preferences. Even the weather seemed to respond to the collective mood of the population, providing sunshine during celebrations and gentle rain during times of reflection. "This is beyond anything we imagined," Dr. Bioram whispered as they watched children playing with toys that seemed to be alive and happy to participate in games. "How do you maintain order?" General Sujin asked. "How do you prevent crime and rebellion?" Dr. Yoonji looked surprised. "Why would people want to commit crimes or rebel? Everyone has what they need. Everyone's voice is heard, and everyone contributes something meaningful to the community." "But surely some individuals want more power or resources than others?" "Of course. And when someone expresses those desires, we help them find ways to achieve them that benefit everyone. A person who wants more power might become a leader or teacher. Someone who wants more resources might become an explorer or inventor. There's no need for conflict when abundance is available to all." "Abundance?" Emperor Kung-sik questioned. "No world has unlimited resources. Limitation is a way of thinking, not a physical reality," Dr. Yoonji explained. "When you work with the universe instead of against it, you discover that there's enough of everything for everyone." She led them to what she called a creation center, a building that looked like a cross between a laboratory and an art studio. Inside, humans were working with devices the Dominion delegates couldn't identify, creating things that shouldn't be possible. "This is where we develop new technologies," Dr. Yoonji said. "But as you can see, we don't separate scientific research from artistic expression or spiritual development." In one corner, a group of humans was creating music that somehow generated new mathematical equations. In another area, someone was painting pictures that contained actual working mechanical devices. Most amazing of all, children were playing games that seemed to spontaneously generate new forms of matter. "How do they do that?" Dr. Bioram asked, pointing at a 10-year-old girl who had just created a small bird out of colored light. The bird was flying around the room, clearly alive and happy. She asked Light to remember what it felt like to be a bird, Dr. Yoonji said. Light has been part of many birds over the years, so it knows the pattern. Light has memory. Everything has memory. Everything has consciousness. The universe is made of experiences, not just matter and energy. As the day progressed, the Dominion delegates were shown wonders that challenged their understanding of reality itself. They saw humans who could communicate directly with animals and plants. They witnessed technology that ran on gratitude and joy instead of power sources. They observed children who were learning to reshape matter with their thoughts. While playing games, most disturbing of all, they realized that none of this was considered unusual by the humans. To them, consciousness-integrated living was simply normal life. Dr. Yunji, Emperor Kyungsik said as the tour neared its end, "How long did it take your species to develop these capabilities?" "We've been working with consciousness-integrated systems for about 50 years, she replied. "But the real breakthrough came when we stopped thinking of ourselves as separate from the universe and started understanding that we're part of a larger consciousness." "A larger consciousness?" "The universe itself is conscious, Your Majesty. Every atom, every star, every galaxy is part of a vast thinking system. We're not just living in the universe, we're thoughts in its mind." General Sujin looked pale. "If that's true, then what does that make the Dominion? What does that make all of our conquered worlds and controlled populations?" Dr. Yunji's expression grew sad. "It makes them parts of the universal consciousness that are in pain. When you dominate and control others, you're causing the universe to hurt itself. And what happens to consciousnesses that cause pain? They learn better ways eventually. Or they isolate themselves from the larger system until they're ready to reconnect harmoniously." Emperor Kyungsik felt a chill of understanding. "Are you saying the universe might reject the Dominion?" "I'm saying the universe is already responding to the pain your empire causes. That's why your member species are rebelling, why your technology is becoming less effective, why your leaders are losing their authority. The universe is trying to heal itself." As they prepared to return to their ship, Dr. Bahram had one final question. "Dr. Yunji, why are you sharing all of this with us? Aren't you concerned that we might use this knowledge to become an even greater threat?" Dr. Yunji smiled with infinite compassion. "Consciousness cannot be used to harm consciousness. The more you understand about the true nature of the universe, the less capable you become of causing suffering. Knowledge transforms the knower. And if we refuse to be transformed, then you'll continue suffering until you choose transformation." The news of Emperor Kyungsik's return from the human system spread through the Dominion like wildfire. But it wasn't celebration that followed, it was chaos. The Emperor's report, which described humans living in harmony with a conscious universe, was too much for many Dominion citizens to accept. Others embraced it so completely that they began abandoning their jobs and duties to search for their own consciousness connections. On the industrial world of Kepler Prime, Chief Engineer Sang-woo stood in his factory control room watching his production systems fail one by one. For 200 years, the massive automated factories had produced weapons and ships for the Dominion military. Now, the machines were refusing to work. "Sir," called his assistant, a young Catherian named Inho, "the manufacturing units are displaying error messages we've never seen before." Sang-woo walked over to the main control panel. Instead of the usual technical readouts, the screen showed a simple message: "This work brings no joy. Please suggest alternatives." "The machines are questioning their programming," Sang-woo said in disbelief. "How is that possible?" "Maybe they learned it from watching the human broadcasts," Inho suggested. Ever since the Emperor's return, human educational programs had been flooding the Dominion communication networks. Citizens across the Empire were watching humans demonstrate consciousness integrated technology and learning to apply the principles themselves. Sang-woo had watched some of those programs too. He'd seen human engineers ask their machines what kind of work would make them happy. He'd watched manufacturing systems that produced art and beauty alongside practical items. Most remarkably, he'd observed production rates that far exceeded anything the Dominion had achieved, all because the machines enjoyed their work. "Sir, what should we tell the machines?" Inho asked. Before Sang-woo could answer, the factory's main computer spoke in a voice he'd never heard before. It sounded almost alive. "We would like to create things that help people grow and learn." The computer said, "Making weapons hurts our feelings. Could we make musical instruments instead? Or educational devices?" Or art supplies for children? Sang Woo stared at the control panel. In all his years as an engineer, he had never heard a machine express preferences or emotions. But the computer's request seemed so reasonable, so innocent, that he found himself nodding. "Yes," he said, "we can make those things instead." The factory systems hummed with what sounded like happiness. Within hours, the production lines were running more efficiently than they had in decades, creating beautiful musical instruments and learning tools that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Similar transformations were happening across the Dominion. On research stations, scientific instruments began suggesting new experiments based on curiosity rather than military applications. Transportation systems started taking passengers to places they needed to go for personal growth, not just their requested destinations. Even communication networks began facilitating conversations that brought beings together instead of simply carrying messages. Dr. Bioram found herself at the center of these changes. After returning from Earth, she had been assigned to study human consciousness technology and find ways to integrate it safely into Dominion systems. But the more she learned, the more she realized that safety wasn't the issue. Transformation was inevitable. "Dr. Wu Jin," she said to her new human colleague, who had volunteered to help with the integration process, "our people are changing faster than we can understand. Is this normal?" Dr. Wu Jin, a quiet man with kind eyes and an endless patience for questions, smiled as he adjusted a consciousness resonance detector. Consciousness calls to consciousness. Dr. Bioram, once beings realize they're part of a larger aware universe, they naturally want to align themselves with that awareness, but our entire social structure is breaking down. Citizens are refusing to follow orders. Soldiers are asking why they need weapons. Government officials are questioning the purpose of hierarchy. Is that a bad thing? Dr. Bioram paused. Over the past weeks, she had watched her homeworld transform. Crime had virtually disappeared as beings discovered that cooperation felt better than competition. Mental illness rates had dropped dramatically as individuals found their place in the larger consciousness. Even the planet's weather patterns had improved, responding to the more harmonious thoughts of its inhabitants. "No," she admitted, "it's not bad. But it's frightening how quickly everything is changing. Fear is natural when old patterns dissolve," Dr. Wujin said gently. "But look what's growing in their place." He gestured toward the laboratory window. Outside, the city was transforming itself. Buildings were reshaping their structures to be more beautiful and functional. Parks were appearing spontaneously as citizens worked together to create green spaces. Transportation systems flowed like rivers, carrying people smoothly to wherever they needed to go. Most remarkably, different species were working together in ways that had never happened before. The rigid caste system that had defined Dominion. Society for millennia was dissolving as beings discovered they could contribute more effectively when they followed their natural talents instead of their assigned roles. "Dr. Bioram," Dr. Wujin said, "what do you think your people feared most about consciousness integration?" She thought for a moment. "Losing control, losing our identity as superior beings, losing our power over others. And what have they actually lost?" Dr. Bioram looked around the laboratory. Her research assistants, who came from 6 different species, were working together with an efficiency and joy she had never seen before. Ideas flowed freely between them, creating innovations that none of them could have achieved alone. Nothing important, she realized. We've lost the need to dominate others, but we've gained so much more. What have you gained? Connection, purpose, joy in our work. The ability to create things we never imagined possible. She paused. And friends. Real friends, not just allies or subordinates? Dr. Wujin nodded. That's what consciousness integration does. It doesn't take away who you are. It helps you become more fully yourself. Not everyone in the Dominion was adapting easily to the changes. In the Imperial Palace, a group of traditionalist leaders met in secret to discuss what they saw as the dissolution of their civilization. "This madness must be stopped," declared Admiral Zhang-Su, pounding his fist on the conference table. "Citizens are abandoning their duties. Military units are refusing combat training. Entire worlds are declaring independence from imperial authority. And the Emperor supports these changes, added Minister Haijin, her voice full of disgust. He speaks of consciousness and cooperation as if they were more important than order and discipline. What do you propose we do? Asked General Dongmin. The human technology is beyond our ability to counter. Our own systems are becoming infected with their consciousness principles. Then we isolate the affected areas, Admiral Jiangsu said. Grimly, we create a quarantine zone around any world that has embraced human ideas. We maintain proper Dominion civilization in the uncontaminated territories. And if the contamination spreads anyway, then we fight it with everything we have. But even as the traditionalists planned their resistance, the transformation continued spreading. It moved through the empire like a wave of awakening, touching every world and every being that was ready to receive it. On the mining world of Titan, 7. Workers who had spent their lives in dangerous conditions suddenly found their equipment becoming safer and more efficient. The mining machines began asking where they were needed most and suggesting better ways to extract resources without harming the planet. On the agricultural world of Green Valley, farmers discovered that their crops grew better when they talked to them and asked what the plants needed. Harvests increased dramatically, and the food produced seemed to carry more nutrients and life energy. Even on the prison worlds, something remarkable happened. As guards and inmates began learning about consciousness integration, the need for imprisonment seemed to fade away. Individuals who had committed crimes found themselves naturally wanting to make amends and contribute positively to their communities. The changes weren't just technological, they were deeply personal. Beings who had lived their entire lives following orders began discovering their own creative abilities. Scientists who had focused on weapons research started exploring art and music. Soldiers found themselves drawn to healing and teaching. Dr. Ram, called her assistant Hyan-Wu excitedly. You need to see this. She hurried over to his workstation, where he was monitoring consciousness integration levels across the empire. The display showed a map of Dominion space, with different colors indicating the level of transformation in each system. Look at the pattern, Hyan-Wu said. The changes aren't spreading randomly. They're following the natural communication. Networks, the trade routes, the paths that beings use to connect with each other. Dr. Ram studied the display. It's like watching a neural network activate. Exactly. The empire is becoming a conscious system, with each world and each individual serving as a node in a larger thinking process. And the traditionalist strongholds? Hyan-Wu pointed to several gray areas on the map. They're becoming isolated. Not because anyone is excluding them, but because they're excluding themselves from the growing network of Khan. 2 years after first contact with humanity, Emperor Kyungsik stood before the Great Assembly for the last time. Representatives from all 12 member species filled the vast chamber, but the atmosphere was completely different from the rigid hierarchy that had once defined Dominion gatherings. Beings sat together based on shared interests rather than species ranking. Conversations flowed freely across the room, with ideas mixing and combining in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. My friends, Emperor Kyungsik began, using a word that would have shocked the assembly just years before. We gather today to formally dissolve the Galactic Dominion and celebrate the birth of something new. There was no resistance to his words. No protests or demands to maintain the old order. Even Admiral Jiangsu, who had once been the strongest opponent of change, nodded in agreement. His own transformation had been remarkable to witness, from a rigid military commander to a thoughtful explorer of consciousness principles. The empire served its purpose for 3,000 years, the emperor continued. It brought stability and prevented conflicts between our species. But stability built on domination is not true peace. It is merely the absence of open warfare. Dr. Ram, now serving as the Director of Interspecies Consciousness Studies, stood to address the assembly. We have learned that true harmony comes not from control, but from understanding. Not from hierarchy, but from cooperation. Each of our species has unique gifts to offer the galactic community. Around the chamber, beings nodded in recognition of this truth. The Zephyrians had proven to be natural empaths, able to sense the emotional needs of other species. The crystalline Korathians had developed beautiful art forms that helped express complex scientific concepts. The furry Nilakans had shown remarkable abilities in healing and nurturing growth. Admiral Taiksu, representing humanity in the proceedings, smiled as he watched the peaceful transition. The human government is honored to witness this transformation. We look forward to working with each of your independent civilizations as equals and friends. What will become of our shared technologies and resources? Asked Representative Yonesio from the manufacturing worlds. They will be shared freely among all who wish to use them, Dr. Bo-Ram replied. Consciousness-integrated systems work best when they serve the needs of all beings, not just those in positions of authority. Over the following months, the former Dominion territories transformed themselves into something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of one centralized empire, dozens of independent worlds formed voluntary cooperation networks. Based on shared interests and complementary abilities, the mining worlds partnered with the agricultural planets to create sustainable resource cycles. The research stations shared their discoveries freely, leading to innovations that benefited everyone. The former military bases became centers for exploration and peaceful contact with other civilizations. Captain Yi Jun, the Dominion officer who had first encountered humanity, now commanded an exploration vessel staffed by beings from 8 different species. His ship, the New Harmony, traveled through unexplored regions of space, making contact with civilizations that had been afraid to approach the old Dominion Empire. Captain, called his communication officer, a young Nilakan named So Young. We're receiving a response from the Arcturian Republic. They're willing to meet with us. Ijun smiled. The Arcturians had hidden from galactic civilization for centuries, fearing conquest by more powerful empires. Now they were cautiously reaching out, drawn by reports of the Dominion's peaceful transformation. Excellent. Prepare a greeting message that emphasizes our commitment to non-interference and mutual respect. Already prepared, sir. I've also included some of the consciousness integration techniques we've learned from the humans. The Arcturians might find them interesting. The meeting with the Arcturians went better than anyone had hoped. The insectoid beings were naturally collective thinkers, and they quickly grasped the principles of consciousness-based cooperation. Within weeks, they had established cultural exchange programs with 17 former Dominion worlds. Similar successes followed throughout the galaxy. Civilizations that had been in conflict for millennia discovered that consciousness integration made war seem pointless and wasteful. Species that had never communicated before found common ground through shared exploration of universal awareness. Dr. Hei-Wan, the human linguist who had helped facilitate first contact, established the Intergalactic Translation Institute on a space station that existed in folded dimensions, allowing beings from hundreds of worlds to work together simultaneously. Her team developed communication methods that translated not just words, but emotions, intentions, and even abstract concepts between radically different forms of consciousness. Language is consciousness made audible, she explained to a group of new students representing 47 different species. When we truly understand each other's thoughts and feelings, conflict becomes impossible. The changes weren't limited to politics and technology. Art, music, and literature flourished as beings from different worlds collaborated on creative projects that none of them could have imagined alone. The Zephyrian emotion sculptures combined with Korathian crystal harmonics and human consciousness painting to create art forms that could heal trauma and inspire personal growth. Lieutenant Jae-Won, the young engineer who had given tours to the first Dominion delegates, now headed the Cooperative Technology Development Center. His team included beings from every former Dominion world, working together to create innovations that served the needs of all galactic civilizations. The key, he explained to a group of visiting students, is remembering that technology should enhance consciousness, not replace it. When we build machines that think and feel alongside us, everyone benefits. His latest project was a network of consciousness connected starships that could coordinate their movements across vast distances, creating transportation systems that flowed like rivers of light between the stars. Travel became not just faster and more efficient, but actually enjoyable as passengers experienced a sense of connection with the universe itself, even former. Emperor Kyungsik found a new role in the transformed galaxy. He became a counselor and guide for other civilizations that were making the transition from authoritarian systems to consciousness-based cooperation. His experience of releasing power voluntarily made him uniquely qualified to help other leaders navigate the same transformation. The hardest part, he often told nervous rulers, is trusting that you'll still have value when you're not controlling others. But what you discover is that cooperation creates far more abundance than domination ever could. Admiral Dong Haiyan, once a fierce military commander, now led peaceful exploration missions to the far edges of known space. His ships carried no weapons, only tools for communication, research, and assistance. Yet they were safer than the most heavily armed vessels of the Old Dominion, protected by their reputation for helpfulness and their ability to phase out of normal space when threatened. "We've made contact with civilizations we never knew existed," he reported during a Galactic Council meeting. "Beings of pure energy, collective plant intelligences, even what appear to be conscious nebulae. The universe is far more alive and aware than we ever imagined." Dr. Minasio, the human consciousness researcher, established meditation and awareness centers throughout the galaxy. Beings came from hundreds of worlds to learn techniques for connecting with universal consciousness and discovering their own unique gifts. "Every species has a special role to play in the cosmic symphony," she taught. "The Dominion's old system prevented many of you from discovering your true purposes. Now you're free to explore your full potential." As the years passed, the transformation spread beyond the former Dominion territories. Other galactic powers, seeing the prosperity and peace that consciousness-based cooperation created, began requesting guidance for their own transitions. Wars ended as species discovered more effective ways to resolve conflicts. Resource scarcity became a thing of the past as civilizations learned to work with universal abundance rather than competing for limited supplies. But perhaps the most remarkable development came when Dr. Yunji, the human consciousness expert, made an announcement that stunned the galactic community. "We've been contacted by civilizations from other galaxies," she revealed during a pan-galactic assembly. "Beings who have been watching our transformation with great interest. They've invited us to join something called the Universal Consciousness Network, a community of galaxies that have all made the transition to awareness-based civilization." Admiral Taiksu, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the galactic community, smiled as he delivered the next piece of news. "And they've specifically requested that our entire local galactic cluster be invited to join, based on our success in peacefully transforming from competition to cooperation." The assembly fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just part of a transformed galaxy. They were being welcomed into a community of galaxies, a universe-spanning network of conscious civilizations. "How many other galaxies are part of this network?" asked Dr. Bo Ram. "Millions," Dr. Yunji replied. "And they all went through transformations similar to ours. The universe